Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Level Up Mental Health. I'm your host, Swizz here. We got a nice topic here to review. Essentially, it's being able to think about problems and be able to review them. Ultimately, especially when I I talk to my clients and be able to have these discussions, a lot of it is related to being able to look at things in different perspective, right? Because a lot of the time it can be so hard to do that, right? If we feel we're obviously under intense emotional intensity, that it prevents our ability to do that. Or if we feel that, I won't say if we feel, but if the past really kind of comes in to impact our ability to really allow us to gain that perspective, right? I always say to, I'm real big into kind of the behavioral kind of approach for certain things in here, and knowing for the fact that when we are born and we're having these interactions with others, for our parents, guardians, whoever, we're kind of giving what we believe to be our own kind of blueprint towards life. And through that blueprint, we're really developing a lot of these kind of philosophies, how our vision is towards certain things. Obviously, yes, certain things like genetics can kind of influence how we're going to respond to those things. But ultimately, kind of the action and the environment that you're in, I believe, really just kind of shapes your vision and your philosophy of life going forward, right? So how we're looking at problems may be very hard to do that, or hard to be able to find a solution if you feel that you have still just kind of the blueprint that you first got when you were born, right? Metaphorically. So that's what we're going to take a look at here, is being able to solve kind of problems here. It sounds silly in that sense, but being able to essentially work on what problem solving is and how to do it is a key thing, especially when we're trying to build our mental health skills here. So let's take a look at the worksheet here of the problem solving. And obviously, again, there's many ways to solve a particular problem, but one of the biggest things we want to look at is we want to review, when we're trying to understand how a problem may have developed, we want to look at the 4 P's here, right? So how did the problem develop? And be able to look at these 4 things that include, number 1, identifying predisposing factors, identifying precipitating factors, identifying perpetuating factors, and identifying protective factors. So predisposing factors, what are the factors that increase your risk for developing the problem? Things like the genetics, the life events, the physical wellness, excuse me, all those things that have occurred prior to the problem happening, right? So these are already set in, we were just talking about genetics. This is all set in motion for how we're going to kind of have that particular problem and how we're going to respond to that, right? Precipitating factors. So I always like to kind of bring up the ABC, the antecedent, behavioral, and consequence sort of thing. So what is the antecedent? What has happened before that brought about the problem, right? Was it a conversation, or was it in an event that had occurred? Was it a response towards something? What was the precipitating factor? The perpetuating factors. Is there things that keep this problem going? Is it something that you see kind of the day in, day out of the same problem that's going on, right? And the biggest one here is, what are your protective factors? What are the things that help you solve this problem, or you feel you've worked on to try to rectify it? And being able to kind of review that is big by kind of answering these questions here. And being able to really just kind of put your mind on paper and review the problem to be reflective on it. Now, I always say too, if you can put things on paper and just be able to just kind of get out of your head and write it down, it allows you to really just kind of visualize what you're experiencing there. And the more you can kind of challenge those thoughts that are occurring by just kind of, let's say you're bringing that thought out of your mind and just being able to kind of put it in a physical realm, the more you're able to do that, the better you are at being able to challenge it. Okay, so highly encouraged to just, if you feel you're having these thoughts, try to imagine yourself kind of removing that thought, putting on a piece of paper, reviewing it, and then that will help you kind of answer questions like this if there is something related to a problem. Okay, so kind of one thing that we could do is if we feel that we've been able to identify the problem and kind of look at the 4 Ps. Remember, again, they're predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, protective. Once we be able to understand the problem, we want to try to create kind of those alternative solutions, right? And again, if we're able to do things like this little graph here, it allows ourselves to be able to really kind of outline, what we can do. What are the options that we have here? And the more we're able to kind of just generate this, the better we will be of when this problem may arise, let's say kind of without the ability to kind of have this forethought, we'll be able to kind of respond in a quicker way, right? So I always like kind of just, emphasizing that because I think it's a key piece. And as we're doing this and we're generating the alternative solutions, you also want to, put the kind of what could be the positive and negative reactions for these particular solutions as well too. So, like I said, it's a good way to be able to just kind of, flesh it out in that sense. Again, it's one of those things where you look at it and you think, oh, problem solving can be trivial, right? But if you feel it's something you're struggling with, using kind of this graphs there or just kind of writing it out, writing what the problem is, thinking about, the who, what, where, when, why, how, or the 4 Ps here in a sense, and then being able to kind of generate different solutions is a great way to be able to try to, address the problem that you may be dealing with. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe. Otherwise, I'll check you in the next video.